We're seeing there ongoing heavy protests across the United States, despite the increases in security, the army even being put on standby near Washington, D.C. Donald Trump clearly wanting to show some force.
Yes, the thing is that over the last 24 hours, and particularly last night, the violence that took place on previous nights was largely absent. There were demonstrations all over the United States, as we heard in that report, dozens of cities where protesters came out and defied curfews across the country, but without the violence that we're seeing in Houston, for instance, where there were tens of thousands of people on the streets with George Floyd's family. Things passed off pretty quietly, particularly in New York, where much of the worst violence had been. There were very few reports of any violence, certainly none of the looting that we'd seen on previous occasions. So what this effectively has been doing has turned the focus back, in a way, on Donald Trump. You mentioned his call to bring in the army, dominate the streets. Mark Esper, the defense secretary, in similar tone, dominate the battle space. And people are saying, is this the sort of tone that the United States needs at this particular moment of crisis, of racial tension? Maybe this is a moment for something a little bit more emollient than that. And a lot of the focus has turned in on that incident outside the White House, outside the gardens, when Donald Trump made that now almost notorious walk to the Episcopalian Church, St. John's Episcopalian Church, first of all giving the order to clear the demonstrators away with tear gas and rubber bullets so he could have a photo op standing outside the church with a Bible in his hand. There have been numerous responses to that from church leaders, particularly from the Episcopalian Church leadership in Washington, condemning that as outrageous and a misuse of the church and the Bible. Donald Trump left having to defend himself, saying that people have misunderstood him, that people liked his walk. But it's not where he wants to be. He wants to be taking the lead at this point, showing that he's in control, that he's the law and order president, not having to defend himself against that sort of criticism.
Indeed, Donald Trump, the image he's getting across, not exactly what he might want, but on the other side, the man on the cusp really of securing that Democratic presidential nomination, Joe Biden, for him it would appear that the race riots and indeed COVID-19 are playing to his advantage.
I think that's a fair comment. He's been criticized over the last couple of months by many for being too passive during the coronavirus months with the lockdown. He's responded to that he's just been obeying the orders like every other American citizen. He's been communicating virtually from his home in the United States. But now he's back on the street. He had numerous appearances over the last few days. He went to a well-known black church in Delaware. He's been meeting business leaders out on the streets. And then he made that big speech in Philadelphia, the first time he's gone outside of his home state, on Tuesday, in which he effectively condemned the policies of Donald Trump. He said, "I'm here to heal racial wounds," he said, "not to use the tensions in the country for political gain." The president, he said, had a duty to care. And I think one of the things that Joe Biden does particularly well is empathy. And empathy is what is, I think one could say, is what is really called for at the moment in the United States. And it's something that Donald Trump struggles to produce. At a moment described by many people as the Spanish flu crisis of 1918, Wall Street crash of 1929, and the race riots of 1968 all rolled into one. This is a particular moment that demands that the president can communicate with his own people. Donald Trump is struggling to do that. Joe Biden, on the other hand, looks like he can make that communication. The Washington Post says he's now 10% ahead in the polls. It's very early days, of course. An awful lot can change. But this must be encouraging moments for Joe Biden.
OK, Rob, thanks indeed for that. Rob Parsons there.